Hello everyone, Jack here, Tailor-Made for Live Fish. Been out today doing a spot of salmon fishing. I've not seen any and I've not caught any, but that's not really surprising with the season we're having on this river this year. I had an interesting conversation with the chap because he was noticing how I was casting, the way I was fishing. We got into a conversation and he was saying the line he's using is designed to be fished as a full float, as well as you can add a 10-foot tip on it. But he was saying his complaint was when he was adding a tip onto that line, he was really struggling to manage it. I explained what it could be causing it and how I design my lines to make it that much easier from chopping and changing between the two. We'll start off with the floating line on the new Tailor-Made switch rod, which will be in stock soon. Tapered leader. In salmon fishing, leaders are some of the most overlooked part of the kit. These ones are special because they've got a welded sleeve on the loop, so they're ultra slick when picking up. They are 15 foot long, and I also have them in 0x, 1x and 2x, which will cover you for the salmon and switch outfits. But what these do is, as the energy transfers to the tip of the line, it carries on down the leader to the fly. So I can be sure on every cast, I can cast out, roll the cast out, but I know that everything, including the leader and the fly, is turned over. So once the fly's landed, it's swinging, it's fishing. Salmon fishing is more difficult now than it's ever been in my lifetime. So much like my trout fishing, I bring the technical and more intricate side of that over to my salmon fishing, which in the past few years has been quite successful. I've done well, where other guys on the same stretch of rivers have had really poor seasons, have really struggled. But anyway, back to the line. Designed it to work perfectly with this rod. Difference with my rods is they load deep, and that is because when I'm casting, I want the rod to work for me. I don't want to have to put a lot of energy in to make the cast all day long. I want it to be as easy as possible, and I want that leader and fly to turn over on every cast, making it efficient. As you can see, head length on this line, 35 feet. I don't really go any longer than that on any of my lines on switch rods. That's because the longer you go above 35 foot, the harder it is to manage. And for me, everything's got to be easy and efficient. As you can see, I'll roll that out. 35 foot head, lift, sweep, anchor and cast. But you can see it's taking no effort and no movement. All my switch lines, whether they are fished as a full float or added a sink tip, are on a zero stretch core, which makes everything much more efficient, much more crisp and much more sensitive, especially if you're digging sink tips out from below the surface. Because whatever the rod does, the end of the line does, because you're not compensating for stretching the line. And then when a fish takes, you're not waiting for that stretch to take up to build tension to set the hook. As you can see, I can just lift, sweep, anchor and cast. And this is as easy as an outfit I've ever cast. I've designed the blank myself, Japanese carbon with a graphene resin into the material. So they load, but they're quick recovery. And there was a little bit of confusion with my rods where I mentioned the recovery being fast. People sort of assumed it meant a fast action rods, but quick recovery and a fast action are two completely different things. I have my rods load deep, so they do the work, not me. So with very little effort, I can cast. That's probably, what's that? 50 foot cast, but it's taking no effort whatsoever. You can see it's rolling out, presenting like a feather. I've probably got 35 foot running line, 35 foot head, and it's as easy as that, but you can see I'm putting little movement and little effort in. But then the issue comes as you switch over to a sinking line and you've got to change the whole casting formula for it to be efficient. Otherwise, it ends up splashy, which we don't want. But what I'll do is I'll switch over to a sinking line in a second and explain why I've designed that the way I've designed it. But with a floating line, that's as difficult as it gets. You've got the little things, you've got the rod working for you, you've got no stretch in the line to compensate for, which also saps energy out the cast. Sometimes they can feel a bit dead. If you've got a stretchy line and a fast action rod, it can feel lifeless in some ways. But as you can see, nice tight loops, nice high rod stop, so you don't need a big long casting stroke. High rod stop will give you time and control, because you can even mend the line before it lands. So again, you're not splashing line on the surface of the water. Mend before it lands, and everything is ultra delicate, which for me it has to be, especially when salmon fishing is so difficult. But I'll swap now to a line I've designed to carry sink tips, but I'll show you that you can keep the whole casting formula, the casting stroke the same, making it much easier. Right, I'm back. Just switched over to the SGT switch line. Again, on a 0 stretch core. So it's the most sensitive switch line that will carry sink tips which I have ever used. And believe me, I've tried them all. It's an integrated shooting head, but there's no rear taper, so it shoots like you wouldn't believe. And there's also no loop-to-loop connection. As you can probably see on camera, can you see that? It's a 6 inch per second tip, so it's not an ultralight tip, which would make the video look more delicate. It's true real life situations. Head length is 24 feet with a 8 foot, 6 inch per second tip. And it's a lot shorter for a reason. Back to what I was saying before, if I was using the same 35 foot head length with a sink tip on that initial lift, it'd feel like the tip of the line is glued to the surface of the water, making everything very, very difficult. As you can see with my other line, I strongly believe that a cast has to start well to finish well. So on that initial lift, you need to get the line off the surface. That's whether it's floating or a sinking line. And with this one, with a heavy tip on, because everything's that much shorter, I can use the same casting stroke and the same power to get the same results. As you can see, that's had a few seconds to sink there, but I can just lift, sweep, anchor and cast. It's no different, so I can chop and change between the two lines and the whole casting formula stays the same, and it's very easy. I can just lift, sweep, anchor, cast. And with it being a short, powerful shooting head, but presents well, distance is easy, let me tell you. Just pulled off, I don't know how much running line that is, but quite a bit of it. And as before, I can just lift, sweep, anchor and cast. But it takes very little effort, even with a heavy sink tip on. Watch it on the grass around my feet. Yeah, the casting stroke is the same, so you don't have to change the casting formula or the muscle memory between lines. And that's why I design it this way. Because I think using a line which will carry a sink tip and be used as a full float, you compromise it with a floating line, you compromise the presentation. But then if you add the sink tip, it's not as efficient as what it could be. Because I see lines as tools for a job. You want the correct tool for the job. But with this, I can lift, sweep, anchor and cast. But hopefully it comes across on camera how I'm not using any more effort or any more movement than what I was with a full floating line. But it's still presenting somewhat delicate, which for salmon fishing these days is very important. You can tell how easy that's flying out, but if not, you'll have to take my word for it, it is very easy. But yeah, zero stretch core makes digging them tips out very easy, because you're not putting tension on the line plus stretch to release the tip from the water, and then it'll closing back up on the sweep to anchor the cast to propel it out. But yeah, it's just the same. Pick up, sweep, anchor, and it is so easy. I got used to fishing the fast action rods, but end of the day I was knackered from working too hard. But snap tee, no problem whatsoever. You don't need a fast rod and a lot of movement to make a good cast. Whether it's a nice clean single spey or it's a sustained anchor cast, which is just adding more load to the rod. That's going out precise, delicate and accurate. But yeah, the chap I was talking to before was really interested about it. But even fishing short, it rolls out and presents okay. Because when I get in a pool, I will always start off with a short line and fish through water before I wade through water, because you never know. We think we know where the salmon will be, but we don't. They can be anywhere. But yeah, doesn't get much easier than lift, sweep, anchor and cast. Fuji K-series guides, Japanese, highest spec available. So I can shoot a lot of line, but because it's got an anti-tangle frame, it's not looping around the first stripper guide, making things more efficient again. I could cast all day and not get a single tangle. Oh. Get it under the grass. But yeah, very, very efficient rod and line combination. You've got to see it as a balanced system that works together. If you've got to put a lot of effort in to make a cast, the outfit isn't working for you. But I can just go off the reel. It's a very little effort, just like with the floating line. I can lift, sweep, anchor and cast, and I absolutely love it. Another issue I see a lot with salmon fishing is people are fishing these big rods and big lines, but the issue is they can't really manage them. So you're spooking fish, you're spooking the pool, and you're ruining your chances of what could potentially be some very expensive salmon fishing. But yeah, back to what I was saying. The change between floating and sinking lines doesn't have to make it hard work. I have a certain amount I take off the head length depending on the weight of tip you're carrying. Basic little formula I use to keep everything the same. So you can just swap to a sinking line and it's just as easy as fishing a float. I used to hate going from floating to sinking lines at the end of the season because it felt very rough and ready and out of control. But I've done the best I can do to solve that problem. So it's lift, sweep, anchor, cast. And you can see how much line it's shooting out. But yeah, as always, thanks for watching everyone. Hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.